Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are talking about a new development on the FPGA scene, and this is really cool. So, this is a $99 DE10 clone. So, basically, if you're familiar with the Mister project, this is a clone of that board. I think that board is selling for like $225 to $250 right now. And this is going to be a $99 board. Uh, they've sourced the memory, and instead of $60, I believe he's going to sell their memory for $15. And this all looks like it's completely on the up and up. This is by Taki Udon on Twitter. This guy's also working on sourcing OLED screens for the Switch Lite. And from what he's talking about that project right now, he's saying those screens are going to look better than the screens on the actual OLED Switch. So let's take a look at this real fast. And Taki did an interview, and so we'll also look at that. So you can see these boards, and we can see the DE10 Nano here on the top, and here is the cloned board, and they look very similar. There are a few differences, but looks like most of the key features are here. But this gets way cooler, because not only is this going to, I think, affect the Mister scene, and but I think this is going to have a really big effect on Analog, and uh, they're either going to have to start really getting their software updates figured out, because we're still waiting on things like CRT support from the DAC for like 3 years now. And so this is going to hopefully put some pressure on everybody, because the DE10 Nano board has just been going up in price like crazy. And there's really, according to Taki, no reason for it. So here he lists a 2024 product roadmap, and this is where it gets cool. So the first item out is going to be the 99 Mister board. And then after that, they're going to release a flagship Mister console. And then after that, a Mister handheld. And then after that, a mainstream Mister console, which is supposed to be cheaper than the flagship version. And then a low cost cartridge based Mister console. So some people ask some simple questions here, like difference between flagship versus mainstream. And Taki said all of the functionality of popular add-ons, plus one other awesome feature that doesn't exist in other options. Uh, he hasn't released what that is yet. Uh, he's said that there will be a warranty on these, and he's saying that this is all legitimate suppliers, which we'll see in his interview in a second. If we scroll up here, we can see his video. Get the quality up a little bit. So here we got Donkey Kong Country running on here, and now he's switching to a Sega Genesis core for Sonic the Hedgehog. You can see he's running it with a CRT filter through HDMI, and this everything so far looks to be running really good. He has a full video on YouTube that shows some of his other tests, including Saturn and N64. The N64 looked a little bit slow, but the Saturn stuff looked really good. But I'm not sure. I haven't been staying up to date on Mister, and so I'm not sure N64 is running at full speed even on Mister right now. So at least all the games. And so let's go over here and we can look at his interview. This is done by readonlymemo.com. And number one question. Let's talk about how the heck they're building a $99 Mister. So, uh, so right here, like they asked, the price must be on the DE10 Nano, must be a representation of how much it costs to manufacture, and apparently, because there's been this apparently a misconception that the chip for the FPGA on the DE10 board was being subsidized at a cheaper price. Uh, Supposedly, that is not the case. Um, so it says right here, while the popular D10 Nano board itself might be getting pricier every year, the Cyclone 5 FPGA processor made by Intel subsidiary Altera is apparently far more reasonably priced than anyone expected, and certainly far cheaper than the DE10 Nano makes it seem. So he's promising basically, less than half the price and same functionality. So we can go down here, and this is the interview with Taki. He says, I've been working in this field for around 5 years. FPGAs were never the central focus on anything my team made, but we did have products that used them. So originally, at the time, their goal was to make a successor to a Mister based on a high-performance FPGA. And so, while doing all this, apparently their focus changed because they started looking over the D10 schematics to create a bill of materials, and they priced out the stuff, and it was apparently way cheaper than they thought it was going to be. So they decided to clone it. We can see Taki asked a colleague to try to clone the D10 Nano, and before long they had a very close replica that dropped some bits from the Terrasic's design, uses some cheaper parts, but should be able to deliver everything the Mister needs at a much lower price. That even goes for some of the add-ons. I'm assuming this is because originally this FPGA board, it was not intended for Mister or anything like that. This was a educational board for people getting into FPGAs, and so even like I think like the $225 price, I think when you buy it online, I think that might be the educational price. I don't remember, but they do sell it a little bit cheaper for educational purposes because that was what this board was made for. And so right here, for example, in the video above, Taki shows a new 128 meg RAM module, and it uses the same RAM chip as the go-to module for the Mister, which sells for around $60. The cloned version should cost $15 when it goes on sale. He says the same chips, same performance, but the real money saving is in cloning the functionality of the DE10 Nano needed for the Mister and sourcing the FPGA processor directly from Altera. So he's getting the chip straight from Altera. This isn't like a knockoff chip. This is the real Cyclone chip, just like the one in the Mister. And so basically, like I said just a second ago, sounds like they're probably removing some of those educational bits that the Mister doesn't use. And because of that, they're also able to decrease the cost. He didn't just disclose the details of their deal with Altera, but he said they had no prior relationship. So he said the most relevant issue here was volume. The smaller the number of units you're asking for, the higher a profit margin the manufacturers will bake into the price. Reading between the lines, I think he expects this board and future FPGA products they're building with it to be popular, which means a juicy order for Altera and a lower price per unit. This is some of the stuff he starts getting into that I really think is cool. He says, personally, I like going into a market and disrupting it, especially if I see people getting screwed. Taki told me, my co-founder is the same. People are wondering if the DE10 board will drop in price to compete with us, even though our board isn't meant for education. He says, if they do that, the clone will drop in price also. So they're trying to undercut the actual educational board no matter what. So it's going to be a major disruptor. They're going to have a consoleized version and a handheld version. And so, I mean, I see this. If this has the same chip in their or in their handheld version, then this will be more powerful than an analog pocket because the Mister chip is more powerful. So, if they use the same chip across their whole lineup, uh, we'll see a more powerful console than anything Analog has released, a more powerful handheld than Analog has released, and we should have all of our traditional analog connections and our modern connections with HDMI. So with this, we should be able to hook up to a CRT and a modern HDMI television and all of that right from the get go with no extra docks or anything. I would assume. Hopefully, the handheld just has straight HDMI out or something. Uh, if and they may not even do that at all, though. They may just expect you to have uh, two different consoles, which I don't have a problem with because if they're cheaper for, especially for the scalped price of some of these analog devices, like at what these look like they're going to sell for, this could be amazing. Uh, so that means even if the board does end up selling for the $99 Taki put in his video title, they will still be making a comfy profit. So that really shows you that like the overhead and the profit that they must be making on the D10 must be absurd. And that they're doing it just because of the gamers that have decided to invest in it. So after seeing the potential for more budget friendly FPGA devices, Taki co founded a company dedicated to building not just this board by itself, but a range of consoles and handheld systems running on it. He told me the company is going to officially launch with another product that isn't related to Mister in any way, with the gaming focused hardware to follow. So there's a lot going on here, and we haven't seen a lot of this yet, but let's wait and see. But this looks like this is going to be really cool if this all comes to fruition. So there are a lot of little details about the Mr. Clone board worth digging into. Taki shared in our interview and the video above and also on Discord, so let's round them all up. So the clone board does use a USB-C port and a USB-A port in place of the D10 minis and micro ports, and the JTAG port has been switched to a header. All sounds like positive stuff, especially getting standard USB-A and USB-C. Uh, and they also said they suggested another USB header and a power header, so you're not going to need dongles anymore to connect boards together. Also awesome. It can be powered by 5 volt or 12 volt DC. They asked about supporting dual RAM sticks because I think the Saturn might need that, maybe N64. He said he's not sure about it other than the 128 module they plan to sell, but visually it looks like the new board has the GPIO interfaces, and so in theory they're saying it should work exactly the same. They said they may sell a simple case. They're thinking about making a clear top shell case with stands like the D10, but they said they want to leave room for the community cases, which is really cool because the community has designed a lot of cool cases for the actual D10 Nano, and I mean we've gotten mini ITX board adapters and all sorts of cool stuff, so that you can put a Mister and little tiny micro mini ITX case, and so like there's lots of other cool things, and so we'll have to see how all of that develops and if this is like one-to-one compatible. Be super rad if it is, and you can take any of those other devices out there that have been made for the Mister and use them with this, but I think that will be we'll wait and see. So right here it says in terms of future products, there's going to be a console version that includes everything that's in the Analogue I/O, USB daughter, digital I/O, soldered SD RAM, and it's going to be around $200 to $250. This will be the flagship console model. The only question there would be pertaining back to the question previously about 256 megs of RAM. And so that I think will be the only question, is if that's going to be, because it mentioned soldered SD RAM here. So I think, that could be an issue possibly, I'm thinking, but I could be totally off base. And then it says there's going to be one other awesome feature that doesn't exist in any other option. Really curious what that is, but apparently it's a secret for now. So the planned product order of release again is the initial, just the board by itself, the flagship, then the handheld, then mid tier, then a cheap cart console. Not really sure what the cheap cart console is. That sounds kind of interesting also. But that could also, eliminate Saturn, PlayStation. So that might be a less powerful version, maybe, with a more of like a chip like we see from Analog. So they still, it looks like they still have another revision of the board that they have to go through testing. And they also need to test it with Mister's various attachments to ensure compatibility. And the release date could change. But just things are still coming together. Anyway, until the Mister community have devices in hand, I expect a certain amount of uncertainty is going to keep swirling around the clone board's performance, compatibility, and stuff like shipping prices. But if all the pieces fall into place and it really does cut the entry level price for the FPGA community, and that leads to a Mister handheld, that, like the guy said right there, super cool. If that's literally what we get, an actual Mister handheld, like with the full power to do Saturn everything. I don't know. I skipped over this. I was looking for it. So the estimate is that it could be here within 2 months. So we're at the beginning of May, and by the end of July, we could have the board. And so, and we'll probably have more information on the flagship console at point. So very cool. And if you want to go through and read this word for word, this is on readonlymemo.com. I'll put a link and link this story. But yeah, super cool. If this comes through with everything that it looks like, it's promising, this is going to open up such a cool avenue. And if you want to play one-to-one or more similar one-to-one games compared to, full software emulation versus basically hardware emulation that's running close to one-to-one, then this is like more like your authentic version to play it. I mean, you do still get some filters and stuff, but yeah, this is super exciting. A full Mister setup right now I think costs $500 to $600. So this coming in here and offering cheaper everything is amazing. If we can get a full build in like $200 to $300, then this is almost like an instant buy for me. So let me know what you guys think. If you guys are interested in this, if you guys are going to pay attention. Also, you can make sure to subscribe to Taki Udon on Twitter for his updates. And I will link to those to his Twitter as well, or X as they cool kids call it now, I guess. And that's all I've got for right now. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next video.